Welcome back to my podcast, Robin. I guess you are the prophet of Trump in that everything that you said has, in a sense, become worse than imagined with Ukraine losing their military support, services being cut off in the middle of ongoing warfare today. So, wow, where do we start, Robin?
Well, we could make an endless list of the things that I predicted he would do. I said that only somebody who was an asset for Russia would do such a thing. And I put out a post on my Substack page a couple of days ago saying he's not attacking the world, he's attacking the USA. It's the USA that he intends to take down. If he takes down the USA, he takes down a large portion of Western democracy. And his opponents have left it too late. They still think that they can use the law to defeat him. But unfortunately, he's not playing by the rules. He's not playing the law game. He owns the he owns the Supreme Court. He owns the House. He owns the Senate. He is the executive, and so consequently, is all he needs now is the army, which he's actually purging, and he'll have the five cards, he'll have the full house, and nobody will be able to do anything, no matter what the law says, because if you don't obey the law, if you don't play by the rules, and the other side continue to play by the rules, you're going to win. It's a bit like going into as the American term, turning up to a gunfight with a knife, and the Democrats are turning up to a gunfight with a knife. They're turning up with the law, but they're not going to play the rules. I mean, it's like having the Sopranos in charge. The law is just an inconvenience that they have to overcome, and they overcome it. And any posturing or challenging in the speech last night, okay, it gets a lot of coverage in the world, but it doesn't make any difference because it's not talking that makes any difference anymore. Talking isn't going to change anything. It's action that are the only thing that's going to stop Trump. And I don't see any sign of the people that are his opposition having the courage to do anything. The bravest people in Congress at the moment are Yasmin Crockett, Cortez, and Bernie Sanders. But where were they all last night? One man stood up and protested. If they'd all stood up and protested one at a time and disrupted the whole evening, that would have been doing something. But they didn't. They all sat on their little butts with their auction cards held up, making signs and wearing red jackets. Well, bullies don't care about red signs and jackets. They only care if you punch them in the nose.
So, what you're describing here, Robin, is like a worst case scenario that's even much worse case than what I'm seeing in the moment, with me personally just feeling that Trump is not really fulfilling the requirements of the Budapest Memorandum. He's asking for land and resources from Ukraine, or just resources. But what you're describing is something that would basically mean that we're into a dictatorship in the States. So, what is it that you feel is the signs that he would be a Russian asset? From where would you first
Well, why
see
why
that
would an
happening?
American why would an American impose tariffs on all their closest allies and friends? Why would they plunge the stock market? Why would he personally and publicly attack his allies? Why would he withdraw from Ukraine? Why would he stop the cyber defenses that the US has? Why would he try to stop sanctions against Russia? There's an endless list of these, which I've put up before in my posts. And he's done all of them, and he's about to do more. And everybody's hoping it's not true. And because they're hoping it's not true, they're hoping it'll go away if they put their heads in the sand. Well, it's not going away. You already essentially have a dictatorship. The only organization with the power to stop him right now is the military, and they probably can't unify, or they're so wrapped up in their legal process that nobody actually has the courage or the strength to do it. So he's essentially won the USA. The USA as an empire is essentially finished. It's going to become the new fascist state, the new Fourth Reich. That's what it is. And I don't see anybody with the courage or strength unless the banks start to feel the pain, unless the markets start to feel the pain. And then there's people there who are tough enough and mean enough to do something serious about it. And People will have to imagine what I mean by serious, but I mean without prejudice. But I don't see anybody else with the strength to do it now. Joe Biden had 4 years where he could have locked him up. He could have used process. He could have done something. He knew the dangers, but he didn't. He relied on the legal process. The legal process has failed because Trump owns the Supreme Court.
So we see all these things that you're describing happening quickly that are concerning. I'll try and use diplomatic language, but what was the signs like years ago where you thought that he might be a Russian asset?
Well, you watched his secret meetings with Putin, which up until that day, up to that time, every meeting, every word that a president said was recorded. It was there for posterity. It was there to be checked upon. It was there to be confirmed. You watched him take top secret materials to Mar-a-Lago, and some of it disappeared. And he was talking about it and showing off to very, very high-ranking foreign businessmen. There's an endless stream of obvious signs that nobody chose to believe. The thing is, when the big bully's in the playground, everybody wants to keep out of the big bully's way and hope it's not going to be them. As Churchill said, hope the crocodile eats you last. And appease that person, be his friend, and be on his side, and not upset him. Well, this is the results of appeasement. It's appeasement by the Democrats. It's appeasement by the decent people of the United States. It's appeasement by the educated classes, because the educated people always question themselves. Am I doing the right thing? Is this the right way to go about it? Surely we should talk about this some more. Yeah, you keep talking about it, and he'll keep punching you in the nose. And you can cry your eyes out afterwards, but it's too late. He's got the playground.
So if Trump is a Russian asset, what is his end game? Is he just trying to avoid some leverage, or is there some ideological aim that Trump would have with Russia?
I don't think Trump's ideological at all. I think he's purely transactional. I think he's a psychopath. It's a case of what's good for me, and what's good for him is power. And as far as I'm concerned, Putin offered him power. He promised him power. He said he would get him into the White House, not once, but a second time as well. There was a gap in the middle where it went wrong, but he got there in the end. And his purpose is to bring down the USA as the leading democracy of the world, as the leading world superpower, to bring the USA down. When he's brought the USA down and formed his new Trumpist racist government, then it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. He's got what he wants. What people think doesn't bother him. What the law says doesn't bother him. What public opinion is doesn't bother him. It's just an inconvenience. If you question him on something, he lies. If you bring up facts, he gives you alternative facts. It's cognitive dissonance, and he relies on that. There you are trying to be reasonable and educated and thoughtful and sensible about it. There you are referring to the past and things you actually heard him say, or saw him do, and then he says, "No, I didn't do that." He called Zelensky a dictator, and then when questioned about it, he said, "Did I say that?" As if he didn't. And that is, yeah. Now you're doing what people do. There's an awful lot of people in the USA on TV, presenters. They're smiling, they're laughing at him. He's not. He doesn't care if you laugh at him. He doesn't want you to laugh at him. I like the way the Premier of Ontario has responded to him. He's shown everybody else how you should actually deal with thugs like Trump. You punch them back. You punch them back 3 or 4 times for every one they punch you with. So he's taking steps. He's taken economic steps, and he's hitting him hard. And already you've got the trade secretary, Trump's trade secretary, phoning up saying, "Oh, we can sort this out. Maybe we can do a deal." Yeah, no, that's just them trying to get half of what they originally wanted. They are not going to stop. They tell you what they want, and they're going to do it until you make it too damned hard. They're going to take it unless you stop them taking it. And the only way you can stop them taking it is with physical force and nothing else. And if the world won't see that, then the world's going to lose.
I can't imagine a world where America becomes an autocracy.
It's
It would
already
be
happening.
it would be I mean, the stock market's going down fast right now. It's going down. I think it's dropped 10% in the Nasdaq. It's like a bigger jump than I've seen in the last 2 years. Almost maybe as big as it's not as quite big as the COVID, but it is going down. Tesla's lost half its value. So
Thing is, you
yeah,
see, he comes out with these policies and he tells the people that this is going to be good for the economy. This is going to be good for Americans. It's going to be great for Americans. The Americans are going, well, let's see what happens. Maybe he's right. Maybe he is a genius after all. In the meantime, the country is plunging lower and lower because destroying the USA and destroying the USA's credibility and economy is the main aim. Divide the world between Trump, Putin, and President Xi, and nothing else matters. That's where we're going with this. And he's got his nodding donkeys of Vance and Johnson in the background, playing, nodding their heads and trying to play sensible. His little pack dogs. But it's an appalling situation. And it's not tomorrow, it's right now. It's right now that it's happening. And I said to you earlier, I feel like I'm the old prophet standing on the streets of Sodom and Gomorrah saying, it's all coming, guys, or Noah saying the flood's coming. Well, I can see the tsunami in the distance, and everybody's still playing with their buckets and spades in the sand, saying, no, no, maybe it'll be okay. It's not.
the only guy that's think I've heard on the media that's vaguely on the same level as you regarding Trump or the same ideas. I'm not convinced personally, but it is David Icke. David Icke's been saying, "Oh, the right wing and the alternative media they love Trump," but he's warning. So I watched David Icke last night for an hour, and it's got me thinking a bit. But in terms of
Yeah, well,
Ukraine, it's
Ike makes a living out of going where the wind goes. So he'll change his tune and upset somebody in a different direction. It's a bit like Piers Morgan, whichever suits him on the day. I wouldn't put too much credibility in that, and I don't actually consider it a compliment to be associated with him because I don't think he particularly believes most of what he says. I do.
yeah. So like I'm trying to balance up things that I like about Trump. For example, I think we both feel like there was a lot of tyranny with the way vaccines were imposed on people, and Trump restored some military. Well, he said that he restored the back pay of military folk in the US that were fired because they didn't take a vaccine. So that's good. There's a lot of conservative things that I like about Trump, and I discussed that in my previous podcast. But in terms of Ukraine, we're all shocked in Ukraine. What's going on? It's just
Well, do you know what I mean when I say you can't hide the smell if you put the shit behind the roses? you
yeah.
know. So people listen to his mouth going all the time, and you can assume that 99% of it, or even more, is actually lies. But then they hear something in that 99% that they actually agree with. That's the rose, and they ignore the rest of it, and that's the shit behind the roses. And 99% of what Trump comes out with is just noise. It's just there. It's a message to his base. It's a message to the dumbasses, the people that simply follow him because they've got no education. 25% of Americans can't read and write, and that is 50% of his following. And you give them a red hat, you give them a pizza, you give them a TV and a remote control and a telephone. That's it. That's their life, and they watch Fox News, and
Mm.
that's an oxymoron news. But it's just not the case. That's where he's getting his votes. And he manipulated the vote again by excluding large numbers of people from the voting system. It was pretty fair, pretty obvious, but too late. It's done. Now you've got to deal with the situation now. So would have, could have, should have is too late. It's now that people have got to start waking up. In 1933, the Germans were the most sophisticated, educated, and Christian people in Europe, and they thought Hitler was a joke. And they sat back and said, it'll all wash away, it'll all be past. Don't worry, these things happen, they come and they go. Yeah, they came and they went to Auschwitz. That's where they went. Because the only person in Western Europe that was standing up boldly and speaking against it in 1933 was Winston Churchill, saying, we cannot appease these people. When Chamberlain went and gave virtually gave away a piece of Czechoslovakia. Oh, that's okay. Just go down there and give away a piece of it. Well, that's what Trump's doing. He's attempting to give away a piece of Ukraine. Yeah. What right has he got to go into a room and tell Putin that he's going to give Putin a piece of Ukraine and force and bully and humiliate Zelensky in full public view? Yeah, it's outrageous. And yet, by next week, most of the Trump base will have already forgotten it. They've got memories like goldfish when it suits them. It's an appalling situation. And it's appalling because educated, decent people are sitting back and watching. They're not doing anything.
What can they do? I mean, they're and each individual is in a sense in the states powerless to change anything if
Well,
Trump is a
we all
dictator.
have access. We all have access to media. We can all get online. We can all have a voice. Now, one voice is nothing. My voice is nothing on its own. But there are influencers. So let's say I've got 50,000 people that hear my voice, and you got 50,000 people that hear your voice, and then another 20 people do the same. Then we got a choir, then we got a noise, and then there's 20 other choirs, and then we've got a storm, and then we can do something. So even though we feel helpless because we're on our own, we're not. We're connected to everybody else in the world, and we can do something. We can sponsor people that are fighting and believe what we believe. We can cheer people on. We can have a voice. The problem, I think, is with a large number of the what I call the far centre, the people who aren't extreme left and they aren't extreme right. They're in the centre, earning a living, working hard, worrying about their kids, getting them to school, worrying about the bills, worrying about inflation. They just pick up sound bites on the side. They haven't got the time to get wound up into politics. Well, let me tell you all now, if you're in that far centre, that if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you. It's going to do you in. And you better start standing up now and speaking. You better start joining my choir.
Robin, you should write a novel about the full road that Trump could travel to, like full blown dictator. I would buy that novel and just listen to
Well,
your imagination.
we've seen it before. I mean, people do say history repeats itself, and as far as Trump concerned, the whole game plan, the whole ideology is straight out of Joseph Goebbels' book. The quote Trump quotes from Mein Kampf, Hitler's autobiography. He quotes from it. He uses the same terminology, the same sentences. The only difference is they're not in German. But it's there. Um, if people don't know about history, then they can't know about the present and prepare for the future. We are in a very, very dangerous place right now. If Zelensky loses in Ukraine, then Poland is going to feel it has to defend itself from Russia, and Germany is going to rearm. Well, they're already deciding to rearm. We're just waiting for Merz to get into power completely as the chancellor. But Europe is now putting 800 billion euros into a fund to rearm. Who would have thought that before Trump came on the scene? Who would have imagined it before Trump came on the scene? It's down to Trump. And like it or not, the only person that benefits from Trump's behavior is Vladimir Putin. Nobody else in the world benefits, not the Americans, the Europeans, the Chinese, the South Americans, the Australians. Nobody benefits. Only Putin benefits from the actions he's taken so far. And as I said, you can't hide the smell behind the roses.
So, given that Europe's adding 800 billion into defence, how would Putin benefit from that, or what else would Putin benefit from with Trump?
Well, that's not a Trump action, is it? That's a
Yeah.
European action. That's Europe saying, okay, Mr. Trump, if you're not going to do your part, then we're going to have to stand up. And I think that's one of the roses that Europe is now putting its money back into its defence capability, and that's one of the roses. That's what I've been saying. I've been writing about that for 10 years. That the destruction, the depletion of the armed forces of Britain, particularly, but Europe overall, has been shameful and made us weak, fat, and lazy. And here are the consequences of being weak, fat, and lazy. When you get weak and lazy, the enemy pushes. He pushed into Crimea. He pushed into Donbass. And he's going to push into the Baltic states if he wins in Ukraine. If he gets any kind of victory in Ukraine, he is going to push into the Baltic states. And countries that remained neutral, like Finland and Sweden, are going to sit back and go, hey, we thought we were in NATO. We thought we had America on our side. Well, I think people in Europe have already started, leaders in Europe are starting to put aside the idea that America is on their side. It's a Trump issue, not an American people issue. But the American people, I don't know where they're going to find the courage. I don't know where they're going to find the capability. Because I tell you now, if they have an insurrection and try to take down the government or huge demonstrations in DC, Trump will put the soldiers on the street. The question is, will the soldiers obey him when he says open fire?
Yeah, as soon as blood is spilt, then that would trigger something in Trump's mind. Once you've killed a few people, then what's the difference between killing a lot of people? Right? It's not much. It's like boiling a frog.
Well, one
Probably,
death's a tragedy and a million's a statistic, as Stalin said. You know,
yeah.
and it's the thing is, the man's amoral. He has no ethical sound basis at all. He doesn't, and so consequently, the step up into murder won't be a huge one for him. It's only if it's convenient or necessary. That's all that counts.
So I work with people in the U.S. military, both retired and active, and I can't in my some of the nicest people I know, I can't in a million years imagine them obeying an order to shoot on their own people.
Well, if you go back to the 60s, when it doesn't have to be the regular US military, it can be the National Guard. And the National Guard are essentially civilians with guns who put uniforms on and defend the internal affairs of the country when called upon in emergency. Well, you go back to the 60s, you called those people out on a university campus, I don't know which one now, but in the USA, and they shot students that were peacefully protesting about Vietnam. So, it wouldn't be the first time. So they will do it. You've got MAGA supporters in the National Guard, MAGA supporters as officers in the National Guard, and they will give the order to people that are in the same local groups as themselves, with the same beliefs as themselves, and they will shoot people, and they will say that they are Black Lives Matter or Antifa or any other group that they disapprove of, and they will shoot them. Now, that's another Robin Horsfall prediction. You can come back to me. Hopefully, you won't have to on that one. I really mean that. But that's
Yeah,
what I
hopefully,
think is
man.
going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I never talked to you about this subject on LinkedIn. I just kind of saw your posts about Trump on LinkedIn. I thought, okay, Robin has something against Trump. But now, like a week later, I'm like,
It's your us.
okay, let's get Robin on the phone to see what. But you're far even ahead of what you're posting, and well, not too far, but it's. I almost I'm speechless. People in Ukraine are speechless. We were hoping for something with Trump
I
better.
wasn't. I knew as soon as he came into power. He told us what he was going to do. He said what he was going to do, and he's done it.
He was going to earn the war in
People,
24 hours.
why are everybody so damn shocked? They're so damn shocked because they can't believe what they're being told by the person that is. He's sitting there and he's saying, "I'm going to do this. I'm going to be dictator on day one." Well, yeah, he's been there 6 weeks now, and it's fairly obvious that that's what he's becoming,
He said that.
the dictator of the USA.
He said that.
Yeah, he did. He
Really?
said, "I will be a dictator on day one, but only for one day."
Seriously? What? How did I not see that before? That's insane, man. What?
It's I get people get in touch with me and saying, "Robin, what are your sources? Where do you get this information from?" The information's there. It's just that people are so busy with their lives and other priorities. They don't. I'm getting on. I sit at home, I write, and I've got 2 or 3 hours a day to sit and research and go through dozens and dozens of different sources and talked to colleagues in Ukraine, people in the USA, people all over the world, and get opinions until I can come up with some reasonable conclusion. And then, as I say, I put it out there. It's opinion, it's commentary, but and I get attacked, and that's fair enough. And people can disagree so long as they don't disagree with abuse. And and it's interesting now, and it's encouraging because there's a lot of people out there that have disagreed with me, and in the past 6 weeks have come back and said, "Hey, I disagreed with you, Rob, but mm, seems like you were right after all." Well, maybe I'm not always right, so don't get me wrong. I'm not being big time about this, but as far as Trump concerned, I know what evil is. I've seen evil around the world. I've seen how it thrives. I've fought in 6 wars. I know what people are capable of, and I know what monsters are, and I've lived with psychopaths. And Trump's the classic. He doesn't. You're a reasonable, normal human being, and you come across a monster. You come across a thug, and you think you're going to press the right psychological buttons and talk your way out of it. So you give him your sweets, you give him your money, you give him your Danegeld, and he comes back for more. And if you don't give him more, if you've run out, then he'll take your wife, then he'll take your kids, then he'll take your house, then he'll take your business, and then he'll kill you because you decided it's too much after all, and you finally get the courage to do something, by which time it's too late. And then he'll kill you.
So when you say people are attacking you, what's kind of? I guess it's from the right, the
Yeah, yeah.
MAGA.
I was getting attacked. One week I got 56 cyber attacks on my web pages, on all my web pages. They managed
Right.
to take one of them down, which was the London karate one, and we managed to get it back up again after a week. But I was getting attacked online. My family members were getting personal attacks from trolls, and you had the same repeated sentences with different names behind them, so you knew they were coming from troll farms. So we can't get Horsfall. He's not taking any notice. He just blocks and deletes us. Let's get his wife. Let's find out something about his kids. Let's discredit them instead. Let's attack them, and so on. And that this is the same psychological psyop game plan that they play. They can't get you one way; they'll get you another. They'll discredit you. Well, if somebody finds something out that's bad about me from my past, say, "Yeah, I did that. I'm sorry about it." But the American Congress runs on a system of bribery and blackmail these days. Everybody's got something on everybody else, and so you've got this. I got this communist image in my mind of the Republican Party now, all sitting there clapping like North Koreans every time Trump breathes, every time he speaks, their glorious leader. And that's where we're at. They don't dare stand up against him. He knows stuff about them. He's done stuff. He's persuaded them. There's stuff because no decent human being would tolerate what they're tolerating.
Do you think that it's communism that is traditionally associated with the left that's empowering Trump, which would be kind of confusing because the
Yeah,
left is
yeah, I
against Trump,
do.
but
I do. The extreme left wing, the insane woke ideologies that have come out of universities in the past generation, the gender politics and so on, and that kind of what I call it's witchcraft and insanity. You that's what it is. Got a sounding, and it got a sounding because these university students got into companies. We got legislation, we got laws made, especially in the United Kingdom, especially in Scotland, and people started to think, well, this is insane, this is mad. And of course, that opens the door for the extreme right to come in and say, well, we'll put all this right. We'll take all that away with our own extreme ideology. We will restore order. So, yeah, the extreme left opened the door for the extreme right. That's how it works. And everybody in the far centre, everybody in my choir in the middle are going, what the hell is going on here? Why do these two groups get all the media? They get all the media because that's what makes the money.
yeah, so like a lot of those guys in Ukraine, a lot of Americans I've seen, they're making videos and they're saying, "What the hell does this guy in the suit complaining to Zelensky about?" They're just like, "What in what world does that make any sense at all to criticize your own guest
Yeah,
on
and
the lack of
insult
a
and
suit.
offend him in full public view. Well, that was planned. It was a setup. It wasn't spontaneous. Even the ridiculous and stupid question by Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, the reporter, wasn't a mistake, and it certainly wasn't an error that TASS, the Republican state, the Russian state media, were in there filming live at the time, streaming it. It wasn't a mistake at all. It was a setup. It was a setup to please Putin. It was purely that and nothing but that. And it's exactly what it achieved. And it upset and antagonized the whole world. But it pleased Putin. These things are not done by mistake. You don't get in to the Oval Office with the President of the United States by mistake. It does not happen. You get killed trying to do that. Especially if you're a Russian. For crying out loud, how dumb do people have to be to believe that kind of nonsense? It's like you're talking to the dumbest dumbasses in the dumbest place in the dumb world, because I cannot believe that he says those kind of things and people go, oh, yeah, yeah, they got him by mistake. They didn't know. Give me a break. I mean, it's just awful.
I think it's because the alternative is basically life changing. Like our life will not be the same with
It's
no
never going to be the
America.
same. You
Yeah,
can never go home again.
it's life is going to be a lot harder with America if America falls into autocracy and China takes over Taiwan and Russia invades the Baltics. Like it's our standard of living is going to go way down.
Well, farmers in the USA, farmers in the USA, soy farmers for one example, grain farmers for one example, they export almost all their grain. They export almost all their soya. They export it because people around the world don't have enough food, and that's where they sell it. Because America's got far too much food; it produces more than it can eat. So out they go, and somebody's just turned around and put a 25% tariff on the cost of that. And so people are going to turn around in China and in Africa and other parts of the world are going to say, hey, we can get it cheaper somewhere else. And they will get it cheaper somewhere else. And people to whom it wasn't economical to supply in the past because America were undercutting the price are suddenly going to find it economical to grow and sell more of it. And who's going to suffer? The American farmer is going to suffer. You're talking about billions of tons of this stuff getting shipped out. And, the whole infrastructure of that trade process is going to die. Who suffers? America suffers.
Well,
It's an attack on the USA.
the poor country doesn't need to put tariffs on the soya though. They can just not put a tariff on it, and then they wouldn't. They can still buy it as normal.
He's put tariffs on all the imports coming in from Mexico
Yeah,
and from Canada.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Now, Canada has gone, okay, fine, we will put tariffs on your exports. Okay. So prices go up for everybody.
yeah.
The Canadians are a bit more precise. The Canadians are focusing on certain trades, on the aluminium, on Tesla, on other specific items that are going to hurt in specific places, especially the red states that support Trump. And it's going to hurt there most. Maybe you'll get a public uprising. Maybe you won't, but it's going to hurt. It's going to start hurting very quickly.
You think Europe is ready for another 40 million Ukrainian refugees because a lot of them want to live under Russian occupation, Bucha
Hey,
2.0.
we, well, I don't think the Ukrainians are going to run away. I
Yeah,
mean, I think the Ukrainians, if you follow the war as closely as I do, the Russians are the people that are losing. The Russians are the people that are cracking. The Russians are the people who are getting hit 800 kilometers into their own territory now by long range drones. Ukraine is leading with technology. The only thing that Ukraine's really short of at the moment is manpower. And, but they're using precision against mass and they're buying time. But that precision and time is giving them higher technical systems. And Russia is running out. Russia, there are videos now and reports of Russian troops relying on donkeys and horses to get their ammunition to the front line because they've run out of vehicles. And that's not that's actually there for people to see if they go and search for it. The Russians are losing less and less tanks on a daily basis. You know why? Because they're running out of tanks. They don't have very many left. They've lost hundreds of advanced aircraft in they can't they don't have air superiority anymore. They have air parity in some areas, but they cannot fly over Ukrainian territory. They have to launch missiles from well within their own territory. But the Ukrainian systems are getting increasing range as they get further forward. Russia is losing this war. Ukraine is in the last 2 weeks has started to make counterattacks that are actually being successful and recovering small tactically advantageous towns. That wasn't happening before then, So this is this is Putin's last card. It's the Trump card. He's
The Trump
hoping.
card.
Yeah, yeah, you like that one. Yeah, we've had a full house and a Trump card, and we're I wrote on the 1st of January 2 years ago that Donald Trump was the greatest risk to world peace and said very, very clearly what would happen if he got back into power. I wrote it again and repeated it on the 1st of January this year, and I'll repeat it again. Trump is the greatest risk to world peace that has existed since Adolf Hitler.
Because he's attacking the alliance. He's taking away
He's dis-
this.
He's destroying Western stability. He's destroying the great alliance, peace alliance that's ever existed, which is NATO, the biggest and strongest and most peaceful alliance that's ever existed. He's planning to. He says, and he always tells us what he's going to do. He's planning to get out of NATO. Who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit the USA. It's the USA's security that's at risk as much as anybody else's. And we went to the aid of the US after 9/11. It's the only time that alliance has ever been called to stand up for another nation. It was for the USA.
So,
It's
but
the American alliance as well.
but why would Trump be a greater threat than Putin or Kim Jong Un to world peace? If you're saying since Hitler,
Because at some point, people are going to have to turn around and stand up for themselves the way they finally did, the way that Churchill finally did against Adolf Hitler. Somebody's going to have to turn around and stop them because you can't stop them with words. You can't stop them with bribes. You couldn't stop the Vikings coming into Britain with Danegeld. It only held them off for so long, giving them money, and eventually they came and they took over the land and settled the northeast of Britain. You know, you can't, you couldn't bribe Hitler with Czechoslovakia and say, well, we'll turn a blind eye to Austria. No, you couldn't do that because then he went into Poland and then he went into France. You can't do that. The only thing that these people respect, Putin and Trump, is power. The power to turn around and say, yeah, well, you want to fight, we'll give you a fight. You hurt us, we're going to hurt you back even more. And we have the power to do it. Well, Europe has the economy to do it, has the population to do it. What it doesn't yet have is the military forces to do it. But they're trying very, very quickly to address that issue and do something about it. But it's a shame because it's a long way round the clock. They should have done it 30 years ago. They should never have reduced our armed forces to the levels, the pathetic levels that they allowed them to reduce it to. And as I say, one thing that Trump said that I do agree with, Europe was not prepared to defend itself. It wasn't spending the money to defend itself. And that's an appalling failure. But that's would have, should have, could have.
so we're both from the UK and we have an aging population and our social costs are rising. So as we increase our military spending, which we both agree of is good, how are we going to fill this gap of burden of healthcare for in
Well,
this bad
you've got
economy?
you've got you've got an economy that is based on welfare at the moment. You've got a large number of people in the United Kingdom who simply are prepared to stay at home and take what the government will give them and do as little as possible. That's what they do. A lot of people take the easy way out, especially those who don't feel that they've got opportunity or advantage. Well, the one thing I can say about my experience of joining the military when I was 15 years old was it gave me opportunity. I had no qualifications from school. I left when I was 15 and I joined the British Army. The British Army continued my education. The British Army trained me. The British Army gave me skills. And so the military isn't just a cost, it's an investment for the future. It's an investment in young people. It's an opportunity for young people. It's an opportunity to learn trades and skills, drivers, cooks, signallers, radio technicians, infantrymen, leaders, managers, clerks, you name it. It's all there. It was all there. And what they've done is they've outsourced all that for, economic convenience. They've got to rebuild it. They've got to rebuild it. And you rebuild it right at the very beginning with those 16 to 18-year-olds. You get them into something where they're going to have mentors, where they're going to have discipline, where they're going to have guidance, where they're going to have benefits. And most of them won't need to be forced. Most of them will actually volunteer if it's promoted in the right way. In the past years, it's been promoted in completely the wrong way by a private promotion company. Join the army, it's okay to cry. Oh, give me a goddamn break. Of course it's not. It's not okay to cry. You can cry afterwards in in the privacy of the toilet, but don't come onto my battlefield and start crying. Do your job, cry afterwards. It's wrong. I mean, the whole ideology, the whole philosophy that they were basing their recruitment process on. Oh, we'll give you more money. Young men don't join the army predominantly for money. They join the army because they're going to see a benefit to it or they're going to see adventure in it. That's what they're going to do. And like it or not, men are more likely to become soldiers, and men make better soldiers in combat than women. They make better infantrymen than women do. Women are fantastic in the army, in academic roles, in management roles, in technical roles, but not on the front line with guns, where you need big, powerful people who can carry a lot of weight and are prepared to commit murder on behalf of their governments.
So the military, you're probably talking 10 or 15 years before those skills that they learned can be applied in the civilian workforce, because
Sometimes 3 years.
the army doesn't generate money unless you're selling like weapons or something like that. So what about all this people that are on benefits that are able to work in the 30s and 40s and 50s that can't join the army? How do we get them into work, and how do we still plug the gap in the aging population? Is that
Well,
easy question?
if you increase the armed forces from the current 68,000 to 168,000, then you've got to have all the infrastructure that goes with that enlargement. So you've got to build new garrison towns. You've got to build new barracks. You've got to put new roads in. You've got to put electricity systems. You've got to have tradesmen on the street. So you've got an economy. It may be an artificial economy initially because it needs investment from the government, but eventually that money will come back. So where are you going to get all those other people working? You're going to get in. You're going to create an awful lot of employment by having that type of investment, and you've also got the class one benefit of being able to defend your country.
But there's still going to be less money available, I guess, on a surplus for the aging people. So how are we going to find that money soon?
You borrow
Because
it.
yeah,
That's where all our money comes from. It's all borrowed. Money's a figment of our imagination anyway. It's not real. Everything that we live on, every pound that's in our bank accounts, every pound that's in your pocket, every note that you hold, that's not money. That's credit. It's all credit. It's all based on a trust system. The only money in the world is gold. Outside of gold, there is no money. There is only credit. And because there's not enough gold to cover that credit, we're running in a kind of crazy credit world. And providing we all play the game and trust one another and follow the rules, yeah, we can keep it going. But if we don't, then we got a real big problem. So you borrow it, just like you borrowed it for HS2, just like you borrow it when you've got any other major structural involvement for the country. Europe has just changed the rules in order that they can raise 800 billion for the defense of Europe and to support Ukraine. 800 billion. It wasn't there last week.
yeah.
And van der Leyen came out and made an announcement yesterday. Now it's going to be there. Well, they're proposing it. I don't know quite what they're going to do about Viktor Orban in Hungary if he can veto it. I don't hope that he can't. Trump's a little mini me. But that's Money is something that's fictitious. If you need money for a big project and you can convince the banks, then then it'll happen. It'll work. And banks make money on good investments. And I would personally, I'm no banker, I would see it as a damn good investment.
So von der Leyen and Trudeau from Canada, I find it kind of mentally jarring to see them on the television talking about freedom for Ukraine and let's defend Ukraine and democracy. But I remember during the depth of COVID that they were speaking against me. They were putting restrictions on my life as an unvaccinated person. They were for me like dictators. And von der Leyen with the whole green passport thing, I was many times on LinkedIn telling them, this is wrong. I don't like this. So I'm trying to hold these two immovable objects in my mind, trying to
Well,
work out
they're
what's
not
going on.
related. They're not related apart from the personalities that are in charge. I mean, one's a pandemic and one's a potential collapse of democracy across the whole world. Perhaps COVID had some links in the sense that it weakened the world and made things tougher for everybody. But they're not associated. The two are not the same. You could pull up any other premise and stick it in there and say, yeah, but. If you start a sentence with yes, but, then you haven't been listening to what the person on the opposite side's been saying.
But it was a very scary thing to have this whole thing of like untested vaccine, and people are like Austria was really scary because they were thinking of making it mandatory. But this whole second class thing, even though it wasn't like extremely like isolated, like you weren't getting access to food or something like that, it was such a quick escalation that it was very scary to where it could have gone. But thankfully,
Yeah,
it backed
it's
off.
what
So
happens when you're not prepared. But we should have been prepared again because we'd had pandemics before. We had the flu outbreak in 1918. That wiped out 25 million people in Europe. It's happened before. President Obama had a um, had a file made for reactions to the pandemic. Should it a new pandemic after Ebola? Should it ever happen? Trump had it thrown in the bin. He had it thrown in the bin. That's a man who thinks that you can cure diseases by washing people's lungs out with bleach. That's the kind of man that, and he seriously stood there and said it was no joke. He looked at his experts and suggested it as if it was a good idea. And, that's where we're coming from. Things will happen that are unexpected, but there's an awful lot of things that have happened before, and everybody hopes it'll go away. And they had to respond. They did what the scientists advised them to do. It wasn't the government leaders that made these decisions. The scientists gave them their best advice, and their best advice produced what we've got today. The vast majority of people who died who were over the age of 65, which is exactly the same results as a serious flu pandemic would have. It kills off old people, and it was terrible. I mean, I had friends that died of it. I had COVID. Me and my wife had COVID. Fortunately, we had a reduced strength of it because we were vaccinated. You cannot deny vaccination works. It works. Now, some vaccines were better than others. Some had different systems, but we were in a hurry. People were dying. Where the deaths were highest was where the population was oldest. Italy's a classic example, where the population was oldest. It wasn't a failure by governments, it was just simply an act of nature, and it would have been far worse had our governments not taken the steps they took. Some were wrong, some were right.
So, Robin, we'll probably have to do another podcast pretty shortly because things are moving so fast.
Been beating my drums there, Nico, beating them hard.
I just yeah, really appreciate your time, mate. And anything else you
No,
want to share?
it's always good to remind people at the end of a podcast where they can find me at robinhorsfall.com. Contact me directly from there. You can get my books from there. You can see all my opinions on robinhorsfall.substack and find me there. The great thing about Substack is my stuff stays up forever and it doesn't get reduced by the algorithms on other social media groups. So you can find me, check it out.
All right. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll talk again shortly.
Okay, take care. All the best.
Cheers.